Good morning and good afternoon to ladies and gentlemen. Welcome everyone to this fantastic webinar I've arranged for you. I love such sessions because this is really where times where I get to greet both time of the day, morning and afternoon. So to our listeners and audience from Europe, good afternoon, good morning to you, and from Singapore, good afternoon to you. I hope you guys have a lunch as well. Thank you for taking time to join us for today. And this webinar that we have under Grow Your Business series is a collaboration between SFA and FinanceEstonia. And really, we want to take this chance to introduce Estonia as a market to our listeners, to our members as well. And Estonia has so many similarities with Singapore, so much so that I feel that we will be doing our members injustice if we do not introduce such an exciting market to our members, and more importantly, not just only as a market itself, similar to how Singapore is a gateway to ASEAN, Estonia can also very well be a gateway to the EU. And I think today we have fantastic speakers who are here to share some of these advantages to you. And why Estonia, some may question, even though it is a country with only probably about close to 1.5 million population, but do note that they have very high, very strong purchasing power with GDP of close to 45,000 per capita. Not only that, even though it's only relatively small country, 1.5 million people, they have close to 100 fintech companies, which is a strong testimony to how savvy and how digitally advanced they are as a country. More importantly, they also, from the public service perspective, they have one of the highest digital penetration where you can literally utilize all the public service on a mobile and on a digital version without having going to their offices. And on top of that, one of the very famous unicorn they have, Wise, is also a global company as well. And all these are from one country called Estonia. So without further ado, let me just walk you through the agenda for today. And this is how we'll begin. Firstly, I will have Tabi, who is the board member of FinanceEstonia, as well as the CEO and founder herself, who will be sharing with us a bit more about the fintech landscape in Estonia, as well as the regulatory framework, as well as touching on some of the trends that our audience can leverage on. And after that, we will have two companies sharing. One by Funderbeam will be shared by Kylie, who is the CEO and co-founder, and founder, as well as Single Earth, who will be shared by Merit, who is the CEO and founder. And with that, we'll end up with some question and answer. And more importantly, I want to call out to our audience as well, that if after hearing from the three members and three companies, if you would like to connect with them to explore any kind of collaboration opportunity, please do get in touch with us, and we'll love to connect you with them. All right, now without further ado, let me hand the floor over to Tabi. Tabi, please.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Also from my side, really happy to be here and happy to introduce Estonia and our business opportunities to you. But also I can assure you that the Estonian companies here in this call are probably as much interested about Singapore than you might be about Estonia. So we're looking to grow our businesses more in your region, and then we see that Singapore is a great entry point into that. But in today's call, I will just tell you more about Estonia, a bit about as a country, as a center of European technology companies, like new starting technology companies, and why many entrepreneurs have decided to establish their European business through Estonia. And I will switch on to some slides just to give a bit wider background what's going on there and here, and why it might be interesting for you as well. Just if you give me a second, I will switch on the slides.
And we can see them.
Yeah, so a few words about my own background. I'm a founder of one Estonian regtech company called Salv, and we're producing anti-money laundering technologies for the banks and also for the fintechs. And we have been here for the last 4 years. But I'm also a board member of the FinanceEstonia, which is like somehow fairly similar organization to your fintech community in Singapore. So I'm representing here mostly the FinanceEstonian views on things, and then I'm explaining to you how, why Estonia is the coolest digital society in Europe, not in globe, because globally we see that we have loads of things to learn from Singapore actually, but here in Europe we're definitely one coolest system. About the country itself, like it's a small, tiny country. It's like 45,000 square kilometers, a bit bigger than Singapore, but we're still tiny in the European context and the world context. And we have like 1.3 million people living here. And like we're like one of the strengths is that like we're really heavily integrated into the different associations and different like clubs in the world, like NATO, visa, Schengen visa space, Eurozone, OECD, European Union, and that makes us like really well connected, and it's like fairly easy to do whatever you want to do across the Europe from here. But why it's important for entrepreneurs, like what are the things that are making it easy to make a business here in Estonia and like be the hub to connect with the rest of the Europe? So one is that like it's really easy to start new companies here. It takes few hours or like sometimes tens of minutes to establish the company digitally, virtually, to sign it up and then get it operating. Like a tax filing, a tax system, it's like digital, you can do it online. And again, like every year there is usually competition between the citizens, like who can file in the fast their tax reports, but also it's the same for the companies as well, super fast, and you can automate a big part of the tax reporting. And also like a really important part is that there is a e-residency program, which I'll cover a bit later, but this gives for entrepreneurs around the world a digital opportunity to run the businesses, like European businesses from Estonia without physically being here. And this e-residency is a major strength that's being appreciated by the non-European founders that create their businesses from here. When we zoom further down to the startups, like then a bit of wider background is that like, if you count how many startups we have here in this country, it's the highest number of startups per capita. It's like about 1,300 startups, which is like one startup per 1,000 people in the country. And also like a number of really successful startups, like we have counted like 10 or 11 unicorns, which have been originated from Estonia or which are founded by Estonians, which is again, like that's, I think, one of the highest ratings in the world, like how many unicorns. Like, so it's like people are creating loads of startups, and also like great portion of them are becoming really successful. And again, like this success is actually taken further to the next generations of the startups, because the founders of the successful companies are really, really friendly and helpful to help new founders to come here, to fund them, to support them. And like when we look at the amount of money that's raised, the startups have raised over the last years, it's like $2 billion or euros actually, which has been counted. And of course, majority of this money is coming from abroad, which is like feeding into local economy, and like engineers and like designers and product people and the marketing people who are working here, their salary rates are increasing. As Ruben also said, that the GDP per capita seems to be quite high. There is also like a really great startup visa system, like Estonian startup visa, which allows local startup companies to bring in like more talents from other countries of the world into Estonia. And again, in my company, like just last year, someone joined from Singapore. She flew straight to Tallinn, got the Estonian startup visa, and now she's working as a full-time employee here, and like, of course, like helping to build our business in Singapore as well. So that's like a super strong argument for the companies. And as I said, the super supportive ecosystem here, like there is no competition between the founders and between the investors in the country. There, like it doesn't matter if you have been living here for like 40 years or like 4 days, people are equal and like very open to this kind of collaboration in different levels. That's what entrepreneurs really, startup entrepreneurs really appreciate, and which brings them back always here. So when we talk about, I mentioned about e-residency, which is like digital residency program, which allows you to get digital identity here in Estonian ecosystem, legal system. And then using this digital identity, you can, as I said, register EU-based company online. You can access the country's different e-services like the tax filing. You can use your this digital ID to verify and identify you in this online environment. You can give the secure digital signatures, and you belong into this like-minded people, a community of like-minded people who have the EU residency program. So again, you can all apply for that, and this gives you like really great virtual access to the local European environment here. Just one example, like how people tend to think and work over here, startuppers. It's like they take problems that they see around us and convert these problems into our strengths and build the businesses around it. And the one great example is Cyber Defense League. So like more than 10 years ago, we Estonian government institutions and banks were attacked by the cyber attackers, mainly coming from Russia, and some websites were down and some systems didn't work. And what happened was that actually Estonian companies and government sector learned from that and started to build technologies and services for the governments, not only inside of our country, but actually other countries as well. And this was like really great kickoff for the cyber defense sector in our startup ecosystem. And now we brought in the NATO Cyber Defense Center into Estonia, which is like helping all the other NATO countries to fight these kind of threats. And the other example is in my space, anti-money laundering. We had a few years ago, we had like some large dramas about banks being accused in allowing money laundering to happen between East and West. But actually, again, like our regulators and our banks and technology sector learned from that. And now we're building the world-changing AML technologies for the rest of the countries, not only for Estonia, but the rest of the financial sectors, and like establishing, maybe many of you have heard about the COSMIC program that MAS in Singapore is launching, the COSMIC program to enable banks to communicate with each other. So, and that's a great plan, and we're helping hopefully MAS to launch it. But in Estonia, that has been in live already for last more than a year, like where banks and fintechs can collaborate in the crime fighting in the common platform. So again, like that shows how these common massive problems have turned into the strength of the companies. When we zoom down like further to the fintech sector, then there is like just we did last year research, and like, we gathered information about companies and from the companies who belong into the fintech sector. So actually, like there are like more than 200 companies who classify themselves as a local or semi-local fintechs, which is about 1/6 or like 1/5 of all the startups classify themselves as a fintechs. And of course, like there is like massive growth happening, like it's like estimated to be 1.5 times growth over the last year in terms of assets and revenue. We're like forming a really great portion of the overall startup ecosystem. In terms of people who are working in the fintech sector, I think it's about 1/3 of the all startup employees are working in the fintech side of things, and like half of the fintechs have been operating here less than like a couple of years, and I think even in today's call, like Kaidi's company is the oldest, like has been operating the most, but like myself and Merit, we have been here for a couple of years, which like shows actually how the speed of growth of the newer and younger companies here as well. And actually, when I look at as I mentioned, we have 10 or 11 unicorns, then about half of them are actually related to fintech or regtech sector. So Ruben mentioned the Wise, where I used to be like working with, and then Skype wasn't the fintech, of course, but Wise as a fintech, and then Zigo and many others, but also Verif is a global verification technology provider, or ID.me, again, it's like unicorn, which helps banks and other financial institutions to like check the ID of their customers. So that's why like it's it's about half of the super successful companies are related to fintech and regtech sector, which shows how strong this particular field is over here, thanks to the great competence that we have around financial services, financial technologies, and access to the European market, and through that to the world market as well. But most importantly, or like most interestingly, of course, like there are more unicorns in the pipeline, as our Minister of IT and foreign economy keeps saying that like our goal is to increase the number of unicorns from 10 to 25 by the year 25, which is quite soon. And like he keeps every time when he talks about that, he looks at the companies who are in this call as well. But of course, there are many other candidates and many other companies who are expected to grow really fast. And we are in, I think, the great trajectory. And again, that's one of the reasons why we're super excited about Singaporean market as well, to work with the companies from your region to allow the growth of your sector, but also in our side. And like things that companies do appreciate, people who are founders of the fintech startups. It doesn't matter if they're like local people or have come here. There's like things that they have called out that they value the most. Like again, many of the things I mentioned already before, like e-services available 24/7. You can run your companies digitally. It's easy to create the business, but also like regulatory environment. It's fintech friendly. It's possible to set up good relationships with the government sector, with the authorities, with FCA, with FIU, with Data Protection Inspectorate, to learn from them what's expected, what's not expected. So it's like government sector being really open to communicate with the fintechs. There's also like new fintech strategy being written together by the government and ministries, and again, like which is defining what kind of financial innovation we want to drive as a country. And that's actually something that founders really do appreciate. In addition, it's like fairly easy to raise new capital, because like there is a lot of seed capital, seed stage and early stage capital available in the market, and which is looking for like really strong new startups where to invest. Availability of the really qualified workforce. Again, we as a smaller companies, we enjoy the presence of the large unicorns. Many of the people who are actually have gathered lots of experience from the large companies and from the world, and they're looking to apply this experience in the newer, smaller companies, again, to make a bigger influence on the world. And how they see the future, like definitely also here, like the companies, based on the survey, they are betting a lot into the open banking, digital currencies, regtech sectors. They are seeing that there is more and more focus on the ESG and sustainable finance that we will hear more about today from Merit as well. And then they're seeing like that there is more and more cooperation with established financial institutions. So like in the fintech sector, it's super critical to have a linkage to the banking sector, and like what are the banks that are allowing you to make to launch the financial services for the consumers and businesses. Again, we have some super strong and open, not classical, but the banks like LHV Bank, who is allowing our fintechs to do the business across the Europe and across the wider world. And just a few words about the FinanceEstonia, the organization, like umbrella organization, which is covering our financial technology companies here. So we have been like active since 2011. Like there are more than like about 100 members who are over there, and the organization represents not only the fintechs, but also there are like different other types of the businesses, like crowdfunding, capital markets, sustainable finance, pension funds, capital markets. And so it's like many of those, of course, overlap with the fintechs, but it's not only the fintech side of things. And like one of the things we're doing is like we're growing international networks, and like we're helping our members to discover the wider world. So we have had very similar seminars like we have today with like many companies in Europe, in Israel, like outside of Europe as well. And that's what we keep doing. And in this micro text, you can find out, you can see some companies, but the most importantly, As Ruben also said, you can always contact with us if you're interested about making business here in Estonia, looking partnerships. And actually we have Estonian embassy has Crystal, who's also on the call, and she's on day-to-day basis based in Singapore, and then her main task and job is actually to connect businesses in Singapore with the businesses in Estonia. And she's like super happy definitely to share more information about our country and our economic ecosystem and companies. So please feel free to contact us or directly Crystal. But that's my intro about wider ecosystem that's going on here, and then now I'm giving back to Ruben for the next.
Thank you, Tabby. Now, thank you so much for your sharing. And I just want to call out to Crystal as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have Crystal, as Tabby has mentioned, we have Crystal Elbel, who's on in this session with us as well. She's from Enterprise Estonia, which is based in Singapore, and their role is to really facilitate two-way trade. So, like I said, at the end of the session, if there's any company that you've highlighted that we have called out here that you'd like to be in touch, let us know. We'll be happy to link you up as well. And I do apologize. I think I made a mistake earlier, so thanks for correcting Tabby. I mentioned about 80 close to 100 fintech, but no, Tabby has mentioned there's more than 220 fintechs and made up of 1/5 of startups. And it just shows how fast the numbers have grown over time. And I just want to call out a few sectors that Tabby has mentioned earlier: cybersecurity, sustainability, open banking, and RegTech. So these are some of so while fintech is very much open and welcome in Estonia, these 4 categories are those that have been called out earlier. And I just want to re-emphasize that Estonia is a very digital open market, as mentioned by Tabby. And importantly, they have a very strong workforce, and they have very, very strong support from the regulatory, from the government sector. This is not something you get every day, ladies and gentlemen. So Estonia then, therefore, as presented by Tabby, is a very good place for you to set up your base, and as a way to and maybe as also a place for you to try out and get your toes wet as you venture into the European market. Now, let me welcome Kaidi next. I'd like to invite Kaidi to share more about her company. Kaidi is the CEO and founder of Thunderbeam. Kaidi, please.
Yes, hello. Good afternoon to fellow Singaporeans, and fellow because like I just told Ruben, I've been living in Singapore for a couple of years. And Thunderbeam is in fact licensed by MAS, and and respect to MAS, I later talk about how similar actually those 2 business cultures are. So setting up a company in Estonia for any Singaporean entrepreneur should be pretty similar to setting up a company in Singapore and actually running it. And what makes us 2 countries as similar to each other is both of us, we have a small plot of land, a small number of people, very few natural resources, if at all. And then what's left to us is brains and smart people. And we have to get the maximum out of the smart people. And I think the mentality and the business community's mentality is pretty similar. So and I truly miss Singapore, and I very much hope I can be there in the FinTech festival. And I thought not only tell about Thunderbeam, what we do, but also during when I shared the story with you, then I also shared the similarities and maybe differences between those 2 countries. But first of all, Thunderbeam is, as we call, the marketplace for private assets. And what we do, we help investors and companies to syndicate privately their fundraises and investments. And we also enable companies to make their shares tradable or handle the secondaries on our marketplace. And our technology is built so that we can serve companies from their first fundraise until the exit. And we often use this kind of nice example, like being a Uber of something or Airbnb of the other. So I think about Thunderbeam as angel list with NASDAQ. So you can handle your fundraise and then at one point give liquidity to employee shareholders, founders, and early investors. startup market is extremely interesting market, And this is one of my favorite slides, which I very often use. If we look at the graph here, then the dark blue is multiples generated in public markets, like in stock exchanges after the listing. And you can see that the dot-com around 2000 was the turning point or the tipping point. The companies who listed after 2000, their multiples, investment multiples for investors were all generated in private phase. So all these companies who would present here, Singular, Salv, Funderbeam, if you think about the wise Estonian companies who's now listed in London Stock Exchange and all of them, then investors got the most return pre-IPO phase. And that is going to remain. And also there's a lot of capital which used to invest to companies through the public markets, through stock markets, is now going directly to the private markets. And it's not going to change during the next, let's say, 3 years, when we're most probably going to see the very different markets, capital markets, than we saw last 5 years, but also the VC industry and everything. There's still access and investments into the private companies, into the startup companies, is going to remain very attractive to a huge amount of capital. And all of you who are here in the call, either investors or founders, be proud. Because that's the sweet spot how to grow your money. And obviously when you see those numbers, then there's a nice market to serve. So that's what we do in Funderbeam. Imagine you invest in pre-A and cash out in pre-IPO. So it is obviously much easier to say than easier to do, because fintech industry, and soon I'll talk about it, is extremely regulated industry. And here, all of you in Singapore, you really have to be proud of your MAS and the work they do. And for the Funderbeam, the companies and investors who would like to syndicate their fundraisers, you can use Funderbeam platform for the cross-border syndication, for fundraising from your own private pool of investors. And you can also generate this kind of, as we call it, the dark pool within your cap table. So imagine your company has 500 shareholders. And there's one thing which comes to the strengths of Funderbeam in Singapore. We syndicate the funds behind the custody, and Funderbeam custody is considered as one shareholder. So Singapore, there's a rule that when you have more than 50 shareholders, you need to become a public limited company. But in our case, you can put all your shareholders behind our custody and still be run as a private limited company. And this custody, when you think about it, it's like a pool of your investors, and we can make share trading only between the pool of your investors. And that's what we see late stage companies very much like. So they need the liquidity, but they don't want to do it publicly. So they control the access, who trade their shares, they control the price, and they control the trading flow. And then obviously we also have this Funderbeam Open, which enables all the investors to invest in your company and enables investors to trade with your company shares in case you decide so. So from very early MVP and traction, when we have the private tool, and then later when you as a company and investors decide to make the shares tradable. And now coming to the regulations. So Funderbeam has 2 licenses from Singapore. One is the CMSL license, which is the Capital Market Services license, together with a custody license. And we have our global trading license, RMO, Recognized Market Operator license from Singapore and MAS. And Singapore is one of the global financial centers. And this means that the experts that work in MAS, they've seen the world because the companies that MAS is working with are all this kind of, how would I say, the out-of-box companies, especially when we talk about fintech. And the MAS has seen all kind of business models. The only comparison I can take and the same attitude is FCA in London, because these are two fintech hubs, and they really try to understand the models. They talk to the entrepreneurs. They are very communicative, and not even mentioning the innovation arm of MAS. So that is something and encouraging to the Estonian companies. When you really want to go to Asia, then and coming from fintech, then Singapore is the place, and it has a very high credibility in the whole global financial ecosystem. So yes, we do have the license. It took us quite a lot of time, but it was worth it, and the experience what we got, and those back and forth questions and answers, we didn't feel it was annoying. It made our business model and our offering better. So we serve investors and companies by now from 133 or investors from 133 countries, and companies from 12 countries. Obviously, one country is Singapore. We built our own technology. We run our own stock markets. We have a team in Singapore. So whoever wants to talk to us, let me know. And Jacqueline is our CEO in Singapore. So she will be happy to meet all of you and respond to all of your questions. And companies who want to come to Europe and also get licensed in Europe in case it's a fintech industry, then there's one good thing in Europe is that we have the regime of passporting the licenses. So when you get the license from one of the European regulators, you can passport it to the other countries. And why not to start from Estonia? But again, because Europe is 27 different countries, and also the regulators have taken maybe the sweet spot for their own, depending on the industry. Estonia is strong in investment firms, and I think crypto could be said, but prepare because they are tough and asking a lot of questions. Lithuania, for example, online payments, and so on and so on. So think about which of those industries you would go. But and that is because we operate as an investment bank and as a stock exchange. We also run our own post-trade services. Then that was when we started to discuss with MAS back in 2017, then for them also was that how come you have like 5 to 6 licenses in one business model? So what kind of license should you actually apply for, and what kind of license should we give to you? And in 2017, our marketplace was still run on the blockchain technology, which made it even more complicated. But like I said, they were super open, and we figured out that we need CMSL, our CMS license, and the trading license, and that means that we basically built all in. We operate the whole investing and stock exchange in-house, and as I've stated here, our marketplace is still the technology is still blockchain ready and approved by MAS. So fundraising, private syndication, and private secondaries is our sweet spot. And here's one case study about Ampler Bike, who has used our services since very early years. The company first raised close to 100,000 euros from one crowdfunding site. And later they came to Funderbeam. They raised 400,000 seed at 3 million valuation. Then in October 2018, they listed some of the existing shareholders, including the crowdfunding shareholders on our marketplace. Then raised 2.5 million later in 22 million valuation. And partially enabled some exit to the founders, because founders by that time had small kids. April, they listed their employee shares on the marketplace. So by now, 27% of the companies is tradable on the marketplace, and the valuation you can see is pretty appealing. Should you have invested in a very early round at the 3 million and even 22.5 million. So the employee liquidity is also something what is our sweet spot, and as you see, Ampler Bike has done it. So that's basically from my side. And should you want to talk to us, here are my contacts. Kristel, hi. She's my good friend, and she knows also how to reach us in Singapore, and will direct you to Jacqueline, our CEO. Thank you.
Thank you, Kadi. Thank you for that very insightful sharing. And before I forget, big thank you to your appreciation for the kind words you shared with our Singapore market as well as MAS. Really appreciate that as well. But I think more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, I think Kadi has shared a very interesting business model for Funderbeam, and to all the founders who are in this call as well, more than just also looking at investing or growing your business in EU through Estonia. Funderbeam is also there to support you for fundraising as well. And both here in Singapore or Estonia, they are here to support. And with that, now let me hand it over to Merit from Single Earth. And Merit is the CEO and founder of Single Earth, and she's ready to share with you about her company as well. Merit, please.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here. Very excited to be here, and happy to tell you more about what we do at Single Earth. And then just to start off from what we do, maybe from a very broad and general context, then we are actually using the fintech solutions to solve a problem outside of the fintech space. So we're actually tackling way different problems, but we found that the fintech solutions are actually the most scalable way how to reach all the players on the market and offer them solutions that wouldn't be accessible for them without this kind of a scalable solution. We're also a licensed company. I will get to that later on in the presentation. So, but to start off from, like, what is Single Earth all about? Well, we are making money to save the world. And by making money, I mean literally creating a new currency, which is the world's first nature-backed currency that we mint based on the work that nature does. So it's not an asset-backed currency in a sense that it's backed by a hectare of a forest, for example, but it's actually backed by an algorithm that describes the work that nature does. The company is founded here in Estonia. I'm the CEO and co-founder, and Andrus is my co-founder and CTO. So I used to work at Pipedrive, which is also one of the Estonian unicorns. So I was leading localizations and these new market activities there. Andrus has been a lifelong engineer and was actually one of the people who came up with the idea that Estonia should have an e-government system back in the day. So we are the people who came up with the idea that maybe we should now start tackling and bringing nature to the economy as well. But let's start from why this solution is actually needed for the world. So you probably know that the planet Earth is in big trouble. And what's perhaps more important to many people is that, well, we humans are also in big trouble because planet is not habitable for us per se. It's habitable for us because of the biosphere that we have here, because of the nature and the ecosystem that's providing us with certain services that makes this planet habitable for us. For example, providing oxygen or water or food for us. Now, the problem is that planet has boundaries. Scientists have actually defined 9 planetary boundaries within which humans can survive on this planet. So these are the thresholds that we must not exceed or go over because we want to keep this planet habitable for us. However, I don't know if you want to, in your mind, take a guess of how many planetary boundaries we are currently exceeding. The correct answer is that we are actually operating in a danger zone for 3 of these planetary boundaries. One of these you probably are quite familiar with, and this is the climate crisis. So we have heard a lot about the fact that we emit too much greenhouse gas emissions. We are heating up the planet with that. But as you can see from this slide here, this is unfortunately not the only problem, and even the biggest problem that we're tackling as humankind. One of the boundaries that we have exceeded beyond any, physical, like any possible limit is biodiversity loss. We're losing life on this planet, and we lose it because we destroy nature. We're also exceeding or have messed up the nitrogen cycles, which means that we are actually already operating in danger zone in 3 planetary boundaries, which also means that we are gambling with an ecosystem collapse every single day, also today. The worst part is that even the scientists who came up with the planetary boundaries concept say that nobody really knows when we have gone too far, when we have created irreversible change, and it's not possible to fix it anymore. So we don't know when we've lost the last bee or the last bird species that is keeping this ecosystem intact as a whole. We don't know when this will happen, but we're gambling with this every day because we are losing species on this planet every single day. So if there is one thing that all people on this planet should be working on, something that all investments should be directed to this day, something that every single person spends their waking hours on solving, is getting our economy, our activities back within planetary boundaries. This is the only thing that we must be focusing on, because at some point it will already be too late and we are going down this ecosystem collapse. And that is the problem that we started solving at Single Earth. The worst part of this is that we still haven't found a very scalable and holistic way how to get there. We have climate goals that we already know that we're not going to meet. So the climate goals set for 2030 expect us to decrease our greenhouse gas emissions by 45%. Based on current governmental commitments, we're about to grow our emissions by 14%. In 2010, the global governments agreed upon biodiversity goals to stop biodiversity loss, just to meet again 10 years later in 2020 to confirm that they hadn't met a single goal that they set. So the problem is that we don't have goals that we're able to meet, and we don't have a systematic way how to meet these goals. So this is why we need to look at the one thing that is tying all of this together: the economy, the people, the consumers, the businesses. What is the one common denominator that connects all of this? And the answer is money. So this is why we are creating a nature-backed currency that we mint based on the work that nature does. And by that, we are creating a financial instrument that is connecting humans' wealth to our planet's health. Because we mint the tokens based on the work nature does, and we limit the amount of these tokens in circulation to how much nature can sustain. More specifically, How we do it is we build a nature-based economy by minting tokens based on the work nature does. So on the left-hand side, you can see the world, which is covered with forests and other natural resources that are providing us with ecosystem services. To quantify them, we have built a digital twin of the planet Earth by using satellite data, big data analysis, and machine learning to build global carbon, biodiversity, and other ecosystem services models that show us how and monitor how nature works in real time. And why we do this is because this is the oracle for minting the tokens for us. So for every time we see that some service has been provided by nature, for example, 100 kilograms of CO2 has been captured, we emit 1 token to the landowner. And our vision is to roll these tokens out as an actual currency. So the goal of ours is to enable people to do everything that you can do with your money today, to be able to do this with the nature-backed merit tokens as well. So you can pay, you can hold it, you can trade it, you can save it, you can loan it, you can do anything that you can with your current money as well. And this is the way how we can, first of all, finance nature conservation directly to landowners, and also limit the economy to how much nature can sustain. Because by limiting the amount of currency in circulation, we can also cap the economy with how much nature can sustain. We're a mission-driven team of 70 people backed by Equity Ventures and Icebreaker. We have actually a scientists team on board. So roughly 20 of us are actually ecologists, climate scientists, data scientists who are working on this digital twin part of what we do. And in general, we're bringing nature to Web3 to save it. And then when I say Web3, then obviously that also means that we are a licensed company. So we're a licensed company as a virtual asset service provider here in Estonia. It has been quite a journey to get the license because, as you know, the crypto regulation all over the world is going through a change. And if I had to kind of describe the Estonia, like from a founder's perspective, how it is to navigate in the regulatory side here in Estonia, I actually have to say that I would describe it in a way that Estonia is trying to find the right balance between fostering innovation, but then doing everything in the right way, building a trustworthy fintech ecosystem. And this balance means that we're always trying to find where do we draw the line? When do we make a regulation that's not still stopping innovation, but then again, making us a reliable country to work with? And I think that is the most important part, that the country and the government and everybody is actually willing to work on finding this right balance, because Estonia, as you probably already know by now, has a very strong brand and support for startups, which makes this actually a very great place to run this company from. And yes, that's it from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Merit. I have to applaud you. This is really a very innovative and forward-looking product that you have come up with, and I have to confess, I have not seen something like that in Singapore as well. So thanks for sharing that. It's really, really exciting, and I'm happy to find out more from you as well. Now, let us open up to Q&A at this moment. I'm mindful of time. We've got another 10 more minutes. So what we'll do is open up to questions and answers before I wrap it up with my speakers today. While we do, so one question that perhaps I have that I'd like to open up to speakers, so I'm open up to anyone who would like to take a step at this. I would like to take this chance to call out, to hear from you, to understand better, how can a company, let's say from Singapore or from any other part of the world, to collaborate with someone from Estonia or to enter Estonia? What is the process like, or the journey like, if they would like to expand to Europe? Because many times we know we don't, or some perhaps they will want to go to UK, they want to go to France, Germany as the first port of call. But we are positioning that Estonia could be the first port of call, and then from there you enter Europe or enter EU. So maybe you could share with us what is a typical journey like, and how can a company from Singapore follow such footsteps? And let me open up to the three of you, and if anyone would like to take a step at this.
Yeah, as I explained on the higher level, maybe I just play this ball back to Kaidi, because you have been telling this different angles, because like there are steps that like there is no playbook, of course, but there are like concrete things that we have seen what companies and people are doing. So maybe Kai, you can maybe start how you have seen some of the companies and entrepreneurs coming to our ecosystem.
Yes, there's actually two ways how to come to Europe. One is you just set up your office here and you still run your business through the Singapore entity. But the second is to set up a subsidiary in Estonia. And like Taavi said, to establish a company in Estonia, it's online and it's fast. It's much easier, obviously, when you do it with Estonian digital identity, but e-residency is the key to that. And e-residency, this actually means that you have Estonian digital identity for the digital services. It doesn't mean that you have to live in Estonia or come to Estonia. And this is what I heard, by the way, when I was living in Singapore. And to my surprise, I was taking a Grab to the office one morning. And then we started to talk to Grab driver. And he asked, where are you from? I said, from Estonia. Oh, I'm an e-resident of Estonia. So I was thinking that when I'm going to set up my other company, I'm going to do it in Estonia. So I applied for the e-residency and it's really easy. So apply for the e-residency. There's a embassy in Estonia, there's an ambassador in Estonia, and that's what opens up the doors. And that's how very many companies are actually established here. And those who need the support how to handle these companies, there's a Estonian startup called Xolo, XOLO, which will help with all the administration and bookkeeping with that. So that's like an easy. And then comes the typical regularities, like setting up an office, finding a talents. This is where you're gonna find it the toughest. There's no talent left in Estonia. We even with Merit and Taavi compete for the same resources and with the other players. So come, but bring the talents.
Just to add to that, like it's as I assume that most of the people on this call are offering financial services, financial technologies somehow. So quite often you would need to obtain the financial license from the local regulator to offer services, not only here in Estonia, but actually across Europe. And depending on the exact type of the financial service that you want to offer, some of these, like quite many of these services are passportable across the European countries, which is like major strength of the space. And like why, like I haven't applied for a financial license for a while now, but I think Merit has a most recent experience, like what did it actually took to obtain the license from the local regulator. But based on what I know about them, they are really open. And it's like, of course, physically, it's much better to fly over to Estonia to meet them, or at least to find some local partner who can meet the local regulators. But again, the process itself seems to be pretty smooth and fast comparing to other countries in Europe. So once you have established the license, then actually you can run this company and license anywhere you want to. But yeah, another key point is that actually Estonia as a market, it's not great for the business growth, but it's great for testing your services over here. So it's like super tiny, small country, society, open society, and you can validate if your business actually can work. And I think I've done it with my company. Kaidi has done it, and Merit is doing it as well. Like just seeing how it works, like it's validated, and then it's much easier to grow across the Europe or rest of the world. But yeah, maybe licensing wise, Merit, do you want to add something, like how easy or painful it was to get the Web3 company license, which is like super emotional topic in media and regulators?
It's a very emotional topic because it's going through a lot of changes. So there's a lot of like uncertainty around that. But I think the main thing is that if you're able to show that you are not just creating like a paper, like just random, fillers, but you actually have a team who is working on compliance, who actually have all these people hopefully also here, maybe locally. And I think these will be the things that make it a lot easier to build trust, because it's all about building trust. You have to show that you are a reliable company. You're not just a shadow company doing some dodgy business. If you're in it for an actual company, then it's not that complicated. I think the best part of that is actually that the FIU is quite transparent. So you can actually talk to them, you can ask questions. So it's not very difficult to actually reach them. So which is, I think, a thing about like living in a very small country. So you kind of are connected to all people. And I think an additional point, like if you start doing business here in Estonia, one thing that you definitely should keep in mind is that go to the startup sector, go to the ecosystem, go to the events, network with the people. It's a very, very supportive community. If you just reach out to the people and start talking to them, you will they will help you with everything that you can imagine. So I think that's also very important. Don't be afraid to just go out to the community.
Thank you, speakers. I am sold. Like the last 5 minutes where all of you summed it up, I can't think of a better way to end this session, because you guys have summed it up individually and yet collectively the whole Estonian market and how it's a platform to enter Europe, and even before that, how Estonia is so welcoming that I can even enter Estonia from Singapore without even stepping into Estonia. And that itself is such a big advantage. So to our listeners out there, do take advantage of this opportunity, because you really don't get such convenience anywhere else in the world, and not to mention EU is such a big market where Estonia is mature and ready as a springboard for you to enter the market. I'm mindful of time, so maybe what I'll do is I'll just invite all my speakers again. If you do have any one final advice or any suggestion that you have for our listener as to how they can collaborate more with you, and also maybe to also share if there's any advice you have to them if they would like to enter Estonia. And let me just maybe go around the room in the order of Tavi first. Tavi, any comments?
Yeah, just waking up, but I just want just talk to people, talk to individuals. There's LinkedIn, there is a Messenger, Slack, and that's the best advice. Of course, we're always welcoming people to come over here. It's super nice, especially in this time of the year. It's not too hot for you, but it's not too cold either. And there are loads of great conferences. In August there will be Startup Day, which is bringing together founders and startups across the world. But there are many other events here. So just come here, ping us over the whatever communication channel, and let's talk. I think that's the best advice. So no bureaucracy, and just let's be agile.
Thanks, Tavi. And to Kaidi as well. Kaidi, please.
Yeah, exactly the same point. Talk to us. The good thing about Estonia is that our names are pretty unique. So there's no other Kaidi Ruusalep in the world, and I assume the same with Merit. Taavi is a bit difficult, but maybe there's only 2 Taavi Tamkivi. So just connect with us in LinkedIn. There's not James Bonds, you find 17 of them and then you have to figure out which one to connect. Ask questions. We are very responsive, actually. If somebody is asking a question about our own country, we are very proud of the country and we're happy to help. And one more saying that Kristel Alver, who's in this call, she lives in Singapore. She's there. She knows everything what you need to know about accessing Estonia, or vice versa, getting some of your Estonia fellows to Singapore. Then Kristel is there.
Thank you, Kaidi. And Merit?
Yeah, I think I'm just going to double down on what has been already said. So I think if there's the theory that all people around the world are connected through 5 handshakes, then I think in Estonia it's probably 2, maximum 3 handshakes away. So I think the best thing that you can do is just to reach out to the community, connect with the people, and you will find all the answers and all the connections that you need to be successful here. And you're very welcome here. And as Kaidi also said, we're very proud of our country. So always willing to share information about that.
Thank you, Merit. Now, ladies and gentlemen, make Estonia the next port of call should you be looking into entering EU, or even if you're looking into other larger markets in EU, such as France or Germany, or Brexit. Now there's UK. Remember Estonia as part of the entry strategy as well. So before we end this, let me express our appreciation to Tavi from Finance Estonia, as well as ourselves, to Kaidi from Pandemia, and Merit from Single Earth. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all we have for today. Thank you very much, and thank you to all my speakers as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great evening.